New York adventure with like the extremely long silly title, where I asked myself, how would it feel to be Marilyn Monroe if Marilyn Monroe was born in Sydney in the 60s like me and grew up, like how would that be? And I find that a very inspiring question to ask with Bohemia Beach. I also asked it with Kathy, like if Wuthering Heights Kathy grew up in Sydney, who would she be? Like what would she be like? What would that story be like now? Who would Edgar be? Who would Heathcliff be? And goodness me, what would happen in the ending? You know, would it be the same sort of tragic ending? Is there something about that story that would just repeat? Anyway, the publishers wanted to put Ophelia out first. So when people read Ophelia, they didn't know, as I expect now with my third book, they know that that's just something I do in all my books. I take iconic women. I think of myself as a postmodern writer, and I ask, who would they be now? There's a second section of the middle section of the book where she becomes Teresa, my character, who is the main character in The Unbearable Lightness of Being. So there's two texts in a way that are like the background or the shadow text of this new book, Bohemia Beach. And I think it makes things a bit fun, a bit edgy, a bit interesting, and it gives the stories a lot of depth. Yeah.
And speaking of Bohemia Beach, so the protagonist in your new book, Kathy, she's a concert pianist. She's also a chronic alcoholic. I know you said with Ophelia, it's that same situation where male writers, they're just endlessly creative, aren't they? They can write about anything. But if a woman writes about something, she must be writing about herself. So, I mean, do you feel this time around that, you know, people think that you must be some sort of closet alcoholic sitting here with your wine glass full of water? Is that something that you've experienced this time around, the same way you did with Ophelia?
Look, I had a lot of editors look at the book because, you know, I guess I've been trying to sell it for a little while, and I'm really, really happy with Transit Lounge. You know, we seem to fit, but a lot of editors said to me things like, you know, but she's pathetic, or I don't like this woman character, like I can't relate, and they wanted me to change things about the book, or they wanted me to write a completely different book. But, you know, as Sandy, my agent, will remember, like, I was like, no, I'm not changing it. Like, male writers, you know, they get to be bad boys, they get to be alcoholics and do disgusting things. Like, has anyone read Edward St. Alban, Bad News? Like, the sorts of things that protagonist does with his drugs, like, I was vomiting, like, reading it. Like, it's so sickening. But, you know, they don't get that same sort of shaming, like, how could you let anybody see you like that? Or, you know, to suggest that, you know, a woman pathetically collapses in the middle of the street in a public place crying and then gets up and swigs endlessly from a bottle of vodka wanting to throw herself in the river. Like, how can you write women like that? I'm like, well, because, you know, there are just as many, almost statistically as many alcoholic women these days as there are men. I think 7% of the overall population of men are alcoholics, and 5% of women are women alcoholics. We tend to think of alcoholics as the guy in the park on the corner with the paper bag, but often addicts are, you know, they have functional lives. Some of them are very, very good at holding up careers and high-pressure jobs and keeping the drinking under wraps. There's always that point when it turns. And so I wanted to explode those myths, not only about alcoholism, but about female alcoholism. I think women alcoholics might drink for slightly different reasons than men. But yeah, I don't shy away from difficult characters, and that whole question about that irritates me. You know, I wanted to have a really unflinching gaze at, you know, at this stuff. And that's where this book is similar to The River Ophelia, because I'm a bit of a, you know, don't shoot the messenger. I like to challenge society's denial about stuff, and, you know, sometimes I pay the price.
So tell us a little bit more about Bohemia Beach. Run us through the basic plot of the novel.
Okay, well, Kathy is, as you said, a concert pianist. She's English and she has a Czech mother. The drinking's out of control and she's married. She's managed to kind of stop drinking for about a year, I think, when the book opens, a period of time anyway. But she started drinking again. The pressure of touring, the pressure of the show, the competition. And at the beginning of the book, a number of disasters. Like, it's always that 1, 2, 3 disaster. So her mother is dying and escapes from hospital. Her husband says, go to rehab, honey, or it's divorce. And a lucrative, much needed recording deal falls through. So that is enough to push her over the edge, the stress. And she's got a big show in Prague. She's doing a tour of Europe. And yeah, so from there on, things just go from bad to worse.
And I know, having read both novels, while you said there are some parallels between your writing to The Woman in Trauma, they're very different reads, absolutely different reads. Much less volume of bodily fluids in Bohemia Beach. You know, it's a different genre that you're writing in, essentially, isn't it? I mean, was it a really different experience for you writing Bohemia Beach? It took you a while, didn't it? I know you said over a decade in total to research and put it all together.
Yeah, like, so we've talked a little bit about the continuities, like I like The Woman in Trouble and Woman in Trauma and the unflinching look at her. That there are important differences. Like, obviously 20 years on I've developed as a writer. I think I wanted to be really experimental with my first 2 books, but with this book, consciously, I wanted to try and write realism. And, you know, if you look at Goodreads, you can find all these classic reviews of The River Ophelia where people go, but the characters are like cardboard cutouts, and, you know, what's all this critical theory? It's so dated. And, you know, so in Bohemia Beach, like, that was deliberate. Anyway, in Bohemia Beach, I tried to write realistic characters with nuance and depth, and like even the minor characters to have them developed. And I also wanted a more conventional plot. Like the plot of Ophelia is a labyrinth. It's a riddle that it doesn't have a solution. Whereas there is a sort of a happy ending, or, you know, a closure sense, if you like, in Bohemia Beach.
And while we did discuss, you know, that it's extremely unfair when people suggest that a female author is writing somewhat of a diary. You did sort of use Bohemia Beach in a way as sort of a commentary on what happened to you when you achieved this immense success quite quickly, as happens to Kathy in the book. She quite quickly becomes a rising star, and it does take its toll on her. Did you draw on some of that experience for yourself?
Yeah, look, I think, you know, all good writing has that kernel of authenticity to it, because, you know, you can't write what you don't know. But that's not to say that the events in the novel actually happened in real life. They didn't. At least, you know, not the way I've presented them. It's a little bit like when you adapt a novel into film. You know, you have to show, not tell. So you have to change things about the story to make them work in a film. Otherwise, people won't want to watch it. You know, so maybe you could have 15 minor characters in a novel and 3 or 4 central characters. In a film, they're going to say, well, no, you can only have 3 minor characters, because people in an hour and a half, they can't keep track of all these people. So you see that things have to change. So when even if you do draw from real life, the structure of a novel and the writing itself will change what you write about.
We thought Justine might do a reading tonight, a passage from the book, if you'd like to hear in her own words. Did you decide which piece you'd like to read?
Well, I thought I'd just ask the people here, because there's a few people that heard the little bit before already, so they might want to hear a slightly different bit, or if they really like that bit, I could read it again. So people in the audience, any thoughts? Otherwise, you're just going to leave it up to me.
No, I didn't hear the first bit either.
You didn't hear the first one. Okay, so why don't I return to that one? And it's good because I've had a little bit of practice. So should I hold this and try and read it? Okay, at this point in the story, Kathy's she's backstage in Prague at the Rodolphinum, just about to walk out and do this performance. Please, I say, I need you to step aside. Okay, I admit it. I've had a couple of glasses, a bottle or so, since leaving the hotel, but I'm nowhere near pissed. Would bygones never be bygones? That damn Copenhagen concert and the damage it did to my reputation, the scandal that followed my tumble off the front of the stage at the end of the second encore, not a scheduled bow, mind you, a spontaneous one, and one I just slightly overdid. But still, when are they going to let me move on? Yes, it's true, waking up in the American ambassador's residence in bed with two guys I didn't know, one in front, the other behind, was a very bad look. But God, everyone makes mistakes, right? These gossip columnists need to get a life. Then maybe they'd let me get on